I'm sure the sessions that have happened so far have answered a lot of your queries in the D2C space, but yet for such an expanding industry, we have a lot of ground more to cover. And to do exactly that, we have our next session, which is D2C Leaders Roundtable. And our panelists in this session will explore the importance of finding the right brand story, cracking the sales channels that will work, and how to keep bringing the customers back for more. So I would like to now introduce you all to our session chair. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Aditi Mishra, Chief Executive Officer, Lodestar UM, to join us on stage. Let's hear it for Aditi Mishra, everybody. And we have a panel that is going to see a lot of ladies, it seems. So welcome, Aditi. Welcoming Sukleen Aneja, CEO for Beauty and Brands, Good Glam Group. Please welcome Sukleen Aneja, CEO, Beauty and Brands Business, Good Glam Group. We have Divij Bajaj, founder and CEO for Power Gummies. Welcome, Divij. Malika Sadani, founder and CEO for the Moms Company. Bala Sarda, founder for Vadam India. And Sridhar Singh, founder, Khadi Essentials and the Ayurveda Company. Please welcome all our panelists on stage. So see, when the lady power overpowers, you can see the confusion on stage. But ladies and gentlemen, give them up a big round of applause. The flag bearers of D2C landscape in India. Let's open this dialogue with our session chair. I would like to request Aditi to start the conversation. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. So welcome all of you and welcome to our esteemed panelists, the D2C leaders. So before we get into details, I think it would be interesting to know their story in a summary. You know, how have they reached where they have reached? What have been the key things that have kept them going in a very challenging scenario? Let me ask Divij first.
I'll ask you which version of the story. You want to complete this time frame in just the stories, then we can tell you accordingly.
No. We want a very short one because we want to talk about the future a bit more.
So my journey basically started with my mom. She hated pills. So when she got a back problem, she was given like 8 vitamins. And as we all know how nutraceutical was led earlier, there were like 8 different pills for 8 different vitamins. And then, you know, it was something like that she has got something like cancer. Because pill is, it felt like she has got something like cancer. Because when you're taking 8 pills a day, it becomes a great headache. And she's basically not a very pill person. So I, would create different things, would crush those capsules and add them in honey and give her. Oh. Tried to bake cookies once, it failed. Tried muffins, it failed. But then I realized that, somehow I think that is where the nutraceutical is not growing in India. Because we are not pitching it out with the right alternative. When it is in the form of pill, we'll always treat it as medicine and we'll not treat it as something that, will averse those problems that are going to come. Maybe something like calcium sandoz. Like before calcium sandoz, calcium wasn't a trend. And once calcium sandoz kicked in with the right format and a cute lifestyle looking packaging, everybody would think toffee to hai.
Yeah, fun. It became fun.
It became fun. The moment you make it fun, that's where you've dented the market. So we started on the journey to make nutrition fun and worked out a lot of version and variants. And then we came up with gummies. And when I wanted to start gummies, everybody would laugh at my face and say, boss, it's for kids. You want to do gummies, do it for kids. Why do you want to get into adult market? And I would say that, even adults want a fun version to, take care of their health. Why not they can have it? And then gladly, we could prove everybody wrong and get into the market and build it as to where we are today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very inspirational. Let me go to Bala. Bala, your category is quite different and traditional in some ways. Pretty much everybody has the category. Right. They all know how to have the category. How did you get in there?
Firstly, Aditi, thanks for having me on the panel. I think my story is, again, I think, like every founder, I was trying to identify what is that one thing which drives me to do what I'm doing today. And, I started this brand, honestly, with a very simple vision, or rather a dream, to sort of take the best of India to the world. Mm-hmm. And in that journey, hopefully build one of India's most recognized consumer brands. I think the reasons are fairly simple. Honestly, if you look at India as a country, right, we offer some of the best ingredients to the entire world, right? We grow 25-30% of the world's production of tea. You talk about products like spices, like 80% of the world's turmeric is made in India, and then you go to Starbucks in New York selling you a $6 turmeric latte, right? So honestly, I started taking that personally, and I said, with this entire democratization of brand building through the internet, I think if there is any time for India to break this clutter, go and make and build a global brand from India, it is now. So let's just try and take that plunge. Of course, when you build a global brand, there are several challenges, and as Indians, we have been not very good at building global brands. So of course, went deeper, tried to figure out what those are, and of course, still on that journey. I think a long, long way to go, but I think it's been a fairly exciting 7 years till now.
So before we move on to the other stories, I have a very quick question to ask you. The last 2 years of COVID, when suddenly the models of how people consume things changed, how did that impact your business?
I think, honestly, Aditi, I'll just tell one, and I think most of the founders will agree here. We've been very, very lucky. I think last 2 years, as a business for Vadam, I think before the pandemic, the last 5 years, we focused on building the right brand story. We've spent the first 3 years building our supply chain, right? Everything at Vadam we sell, today we manufacture it ourselves, right? That entails a lot of hard work. And then when the pandemic hit, I think, the fact that we were digital first really helped us, because, everybody who was actually going, and a lot of those consumers who were buying from offline stores globally in the US, in Europe, they suddenly came online and, they saw us. And obviously that helps us, grow much faster, than we thought. Even though I genuinely believe e-commerce is just a channel, ultimately these are just channels. Your brand is your brand, and I think nothing can replace that. But I think that initial push to sort of scale up, I think that definitely happened due to COVID, both from a channel perspective and of course due to COVID and, everybody telling you to consume turmeric and, the various food bodies advertising on our behalf the benefits of products like turmeric, green tea. I think that obviously helped us quite a bit.
Thank you for that, Bala. With that, let me ask Sridhar. Your business model is quite interesting, and you have two different kinds of brands to talk about. Tell me a bit about them.
So, should I begin with the journey or with the brand models?
As you like, what's the way that you see the two brands? What's working for one? And how are you really looking at them?
Okay. So, the first brand, which is Khadi Essentials, started out of a personal journey, personal skill situation that I had. And in my quest to find a sustainable long-term cure and not just a suppressant, symptomatic solution, ended up with my experiments with Ayurveda. Started the research when Param and I got married in 2017. We started with the research of the formulations that we wanted to work on, and fortunately the doctor who had, the Ayurveda Chikitsak, who had helped us cure my issue, was involved in the formulation of the the inaugural launch, so to say, of Khadi Essentials. We started with our research in 2017 and ended up, because both of us were working full-time, it took us some time. We launched our first brand, Khadi Essentials, in late 2019, early 2020, and then COVID hit. But the itch to do something broader, something deeper in Ayurveda had always persisted, because we knew that although we were doing clean, organic, Ayurveda-inspired beauty with Khadi Essentials, there was something more that we could have done with Ayurveda, because Ayurveda focuses a lot on holistic wellness and not just how you look from the outside. And that's when the Ayurveda company was seeded, the idea was born. And the brand name, the website, everything was frozen right in 2020. But as Bala said, COVID brought all of us D2C brands. It showed us some other side of the picture. Probably things were not as easy for other side of the world, but for brands that were trying to create a story online, there was a natural transition of more customers and willful buyers on e-commerce. So we were engrossed in the hypergrowth of Khadi Essential, and in 2021, we started with the Ayurveda company. We're trying to scale the Ayurveda company as a holistic Ayurvedic FMCG brand that caters to the entire life cycle of a baby, right from reproduction stage, because we also do sexual wellness, to the time when a baby is born, and all the stages in between. And we're going omni-channel. So we started as a digital-first brand, but we understand that the customer is everywhere. So we're trying to be as closer to the customer with this offering that bridges the divide between Masi and classy Ayurveda in India.
Thanks for that, Sridhar. Malika, building on what Sridhar said, you are targeting a very, very specific customer or a audience niche, let's say. How are you looking at this story, and how are you looking at building that relationship and going forward?
This is a very interesting question, right? And I think everybody on the panel right now said the same thing, saying that it was something which was very personal to you, which you decided to convert into a business. So I had a very similar story. I was struggling as a mother to find really good quality products for my daughters. And when I was importing, and as my friends who were coming from abroad, or every abroad trip that we took, as more and more friends started having babies, the spaces in their in their luggages started reducing. And I just refused to compromise. So the whole story of the Moms Co starts from the fact that why should a mother ever have to compromise on what she's choosing for herself, for her children, and her babies? And that was the ethos with which we built the Moms Company. It was a very difficult task to do, because when we started, there was huge global giants that existed, and there was no one else who had ventured into the category. And we went ahead as people who were starting for the first time, saying that, I'm going to go ahead and create a category. Right? There was no such category as mom and baby.
Yeah,
you had
absolutely.
like baby as a category, and you have beauty as a category. And we said that we're going to create this category because I honestly don't believe that it's a very niche category, because every woman, or at least 80% of the women, go through this journey of becoming a mom. And once you're a mom for life. Yes. And you go through different transitions in your life, from when you're pregnant, you start thinking of things differently. Then you have a baby, things are very different. And when you're managing a baby and managing a family, it's again very different, right? So the idea behind the Moms Company was always as to how do I build relevance in the life of this mother, and how do I add value? Because I honestly feel that as a D2C brand, as opposed to any other brand, the biggest leverage you have is the closeness to the consumer. And how is it that you deepen the bond with the consumer, which is why it wasn't just flashing just products to them. It was also passing a lot of information to them, having a lot of conversations to them to understand what their pain points were, to actually build on a brand that was truly meant for the mother out there and extended her journey with her every time when she sort of moved to the next stage of her motherhood. And that was how we started with that particular mission.
Great. So I'll come to Sukleen. Now, Sukleen, you have a very interesting exposure in terms of working with very traditional, regular brands and how they market. And that's quite a different model from how D2C brands work. And what's been your understanding? What's the difference between these two models? And why do you think D2C is really growing now?
A really good question. I think in my journey, I had the privilege of working on some really large mega beauty brands, whether it was at L'Oreal or even for that matter, Lakme, Durex. Large brands, global presence, global footprints. See, in today's day and age, with more and more, with younger population, right, more and more consumers want needs to be answered which are bespoke to them, right? As large-scale mass manufacturers, you always end up chasing what has the greatest denominator. However, today in the age and era that we're in, when consumers want tailor-made solutions, D2C is very happy finding a niche and then expanding that niche. And I think every single person who's sitting beside me has actually managed to find a very relevant niche that they've grown and expanded. But this is pure category creation, right? And I think partly the reason why I genuinely believe D2C will continue to grow is because there's an extreme consumer intimacy. You are listening to your consumers, you're interacting with them, you're customizing for them, and you're growing a market. And that'll always be relevant. I think in the world that we grew up in, it took you a very long time before you hit gold. And you would only go behind an idea which was hugely scalable, right, because you were wanting to sell in organizations which needed a minimum threshold for it to even be considered for a launch. Here, you're happy to go and chase a small idea and be persistent and make that large. And I think that itself is the moat which will continue to make many, many micro entrepreneurs taste gold, in my view.
Yeah, so very interesting, and I think that brings us to the next question then, that when we look at D2C companies growing and evolving, what are the models that they should be really seeking? Because is it always going to be one set of small consumers who you keep on mining and building a stronger and an ever stronger relationship, or do you really scale up? And if you scale up, then how do you avoid falling into the pitfall of what these large advertisers struggle with today?
I mean, I'm happy to just share my perspective.
please.
I think, see, there's a time and space for everything, right? If you don't have a core loyal group, you're going to be extremely irrelevant. So as you start, it's extremely important to build loyalty. It's super relevant that your product is so fantastic that there's huge amount of recommendation and you have a large core of loyalists. So at that point of time in your 0 to 1 journey, really getting that success story right and going in the grunt and getting every single element absolutely right is very valuable. In fact, I really resonate with what Bala also spoke about in terms of getting the back end right. Because it's not just the consumer. Once your demand spikes, are you really ready for it? Yes. Right? Is your back end completely sorted? Are you investing in the right supply chain? But I think once you realize that you've got a sizable chunk of loyalists and there is a need that resonates with a larger chunk, that's when you really have to accelerate the pedal, make sure you have the right funds and grow. But getting that 0 to 1 journey right is super critical. And being patient is super critical. Because there are no shortcuts there.
Yeah, absolutely no shortcuts because everybody's in front of the consumer straight. So there's nowhere to hide. With that, Divij, tell me, you've gone through these multiple stages in a category which was relatively unexplored and new.
Yeah.
How have you straddled these stages of managing 0 to 1 and then now scaling up?
So I would say it never existed. Nobody could imagine this category. I still remember when I'll go to, get funding into the company, everybody would just laugh off. And today we have like 34 odd rivals and out of them 18 are funded.
Yeah.
That's the separate game. We still hold 70% of the market. But I'll tell you, like Suklin just said, that when we started, we were very clear that you can't target the whole world. You can't target whole India. You can't even target whole Delhi.
Yeah.
You have to just understand online who's buying you first. Exactly how I think the Facebook algorithm also works. You start low, they start to see what is your audience, they start to make a pool, and then you replicate that pool. That is a similar situation when you start any brand. You start small, you start to understand who's buying you. First, once we've understood who's buying us, we then go to see that if they're satisfied. What else do they want? What are their problems? How do I customize? How do I fit myself? And what do they want next? So what do they want next is my NPD. Who's buying me is where I want to scale up. Because then I create a similar pool of the set audience and then I want to get to the same audience. Because I can't make a product that is fit for 120 crore people in India.
Yeah.
I have to understand who's buying me and then I have to scale it to that. And then, since we were a science brand, it was very important that, to maintain that sustainability and that future approach, that we have to be very particular alongside fun towards science. So we made sure that all the products that we develop are all clinically backed, are all clinically tested. And not just normal clinical trials, any clinical trials that we conduct are registered with WHO. So we do it at the international level, and all of them are public. We have kept everything public so that anybody who wants to see if, it's just, gummies, and if the gummies are effective or how effective they are, you just have to type Power Gummies clinical trials on Google and get everything. So that kind of transparency is what you have to keep with your consumers to grow further.
Because that's what's going to keep them coming back to you.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. See, they're trusting a brand which is online.
Yeah.
So it's very important alongside loyalty to bring that trust with them.
Yeah.
Is what will keep them loyal to you and keep building the brand for further audience.
Great. So Shrida, let me ask you one question. Something that you mentioned, saying that, and I think Bala also spoke a bit about it, that the current delivery mechanism is only a delivery mechanism. So we are more e-to-com right now because that's where more people are coming in. But we will eventually need to scale out perhaps in different ways. How are you planning to do that with your brands?
So, like I was mentioning earlier that, and I would try to build on what David said. So, when you start, you think everybody was waiting for your brand to launch and everybody is a customer. But it doesn't work like that. The entire world, entire Gurgaon, not everybody sitting over here would be a customer. So first is taking cuts at the level of psychography, demography, identifying what is the age of your TG, geography, everything, demography around it. And then once you have identified a certain pattern, a trend, some cohorts you've established, then repeating more of that. Also, the beauty of D2C is that you're so intimately bound to the customer that, if you do nothing and just keep on improving the feedback that you get from the customer, you're kind of going to get it by almost about 80-90%. Because the customer would tell you whether your operations, your supply chain is good or not. Customer would tell you your product is amazing or not. Customer would tell you whether, if you're not getting the right click-throughs on your Facebook ads, they would tell you whether your creative and communication is good or not. They would also tell you whether, the need that you thought existed in the market and the problem that you were trying to solve actually exists or not, because otherwise it cannot be scaled. So I think we just heard that right, and we've been trying to do that as intimately as possible. And the consequence being, we've now expanded omni-channel. And we intend to continue to do so because, customers ask you, "Aap log offline mein nahi ho kya? Ye aur kahan milta hai? Where can I find it?" Because we need to understand that more than 90% of India still shops offline. And we wanted to be closer to a customer and wherever they were. And we also understood the kind of market and TG that we were catering to may not be only available in metro cities. So there is a horizontal as well as a vertical, vertical spread of our customers, and just trying to be as closer to where the real customer is. And also you need to understand that whenever a brand is introduced, there are only so many people who would be able to associate, because it's not that they were not using any products before you came. They were doing something, they were still living, they had a life. Yeah. So you need to identify that group of loyalists and that feedback that you keep getting from them and build more and more on that.
So when you shift from a purely digital distributed kind of a format, where integration, interaction is very detailed and personal, and you go omni-channel, you go on ground, how do you see that interaction actually shifting? Because it's not going to be as seamless, it's not going to be as easy and direct to collect feedback. How do you see that changing? I think you give your point of view, and then I think I would like to hear Bala also on this point, that how does he see that interaction shifting when you go beyond just direct selling online, which is one-to-one, and you obviously collect a lot of information, versus how it changes when you go omni-channel, when you are available in other points where you will not get feedback?
Absolutely, Aditi. I think overall there is definitely a significant sort of change, and I would say that the kind of opportunities you get online to interact with your consumers, it's not even 1/100th of that in an offline store, right? I mean, you can set up shop, you can have, we sell in global markets, there's no concept of a promoter, right? So, we get like 4 hours to demo in one store, probably twice in a month, just because the cost of anything there is very expensive. I think, and that's why honestly, the digital first route is so important, because, think of your online store like a supermarket filled with 200 of your brand's SKUs. Whereas when you go into retail, you only get to identify your top 8-10 SKUs with very, very minimal involvement, so you just can't go wrong, right? And that is why I think if you look at us, and again, like she mentioned, 95-96% of grocery in the US, from where 70% of Vadam's revenue comes from, is still offline.
Yeah.
And what being online, the advantage it gave us was that, when we went offline, so our playbook, if I can use that word, has been very simple. You choose, you sort of identify what's working online. So Amazon was 50% market share in the US, and then our own website and Walmart. I think between these 3 channels, we were contributing to almost 100% of our revenue in the first 5 years. We launched a lot of products online. You can do that fairly quickly. You launch quickly, you fail fast, you identify your winners, and you scale that up. When that happened at scale, we started getting inbound from offline retailers on their own. And, when we launched at the first retailer in October 19, it's a chain called Wegmans. Within 3 months, we were the #1 seller in the herbal category, herbal tea category. And I think the only reason was that when we launched with them, we knew what consumers around those stores were buying, right? We knew what are the products which were differentiated on the shelf. And we had so much data that, it just made it fairly easy for us, even though, like I said, the communication you have with the consumers in the store is significantly less versus, on your D2C website where, on our own website where every time somebody orders, they get an email saying that, you can choose to book a time with me, the founder, for 20 minutes and I can speak to them to understand what they're thinking versus, not even knowing who's buying your product, right, to some level. So that's at least my perspective.
What do you think, Sridhar? Now that you are actually going to set up in smaller towns, like you said, we are going beyond larger towns, we are going to be in smaller towns with pop-up stores. How will you manage this duality?
So, India, fortunately, we have beauty advisor-led stores. And I think till the time you're not that large, wherein you lose control to the last step of the journey, you can continue to have mechanisms. For example, we have a weekly call wherein we have the offline, especially the website team, and the supervisors of the offline, online and offline teams both, to understand what is the kind of feedback we are getting on the products, what kind of age group people are generally visiting the kiosks/EBOs, what is the first impression of the products, have they heard of this brand or not before this, and then we adapt the communication accordingly. That has really helped us in improving our online performance because, see, at the end of the day, it's one brand and it could potentially be one customer also. And it is offline that would fuel online and vice versa. So for us, fortunately, not for the general trade or modern trade outlets, I would say, but for beauty advisor-led outlets, the connection has grown stronger and it helps us becoming better for our online channels also.
Great. So, Malika, tell me from your perspective, because you are actually addressing a very, very targeted audience with a very strong relationship. The bonding, especially in baby care, is always very high. How do you mine and slice your data to make sure that you continue to engage further?
So, as everybody said, D2C gives you a lot of data and you have a lot of consumers. I think the power of D2C really comes into picture when you're slightly at larger scale. And there you can actually create your own cohorts. Right? So you're not dependent on Facebook or anybody else doing it for you. The system that we follow at the Moms Company is that once those cohorts is created, we use all channels to communicate with the consumer. So for instance, Instagram, we are looking to launch in Baroda. Which are the stores you actually shop from? That's just a simple example. What happens is your consumers who follow you on Insta, who are from the city, will respond back saying, these are my main stores. So those become like the first point of contact for us saying this is where. Those stores then get mined to pin codes around in Baroda where our shipments actually happen. Now, if those two marry, then those are definitely the first stores you go to, right? And once you go to those as the first store, you also again put out an announcement saying, thanks for letting us know, based on your suggestions, this is where we are. Yeah. What that also does for you is that the consumer kind of is constantly hearing that you are listening to them and acting on what they're saying, and that keeps a two-way communication going, which I think is very, very important. Once you've done that, they become the people who kind of have conversations with everybody else. We now, as what we were discussing before, how do you make yourself more and more relevant for the consumer? We started off with catering for pregnancy, which is a really small targeted set of audience, but that's also where the mom begins her journey. Yeah. So the vision was to cater to her, but we started off from a space that was relatively unoccupied by anyone else, went in there, occupied the entire space. We have the largest portfolio of products for any pregnant women. We have the most trusted and the most bought gifting partner on pregnancy for anyone else today, right? And from there expanded to baby and then expanded to face and then expanded to hair. So today I have a whole sort of offering that any other FMCG company would have. But now that I have it all, I'm also relevant to her for a larger period of time. It's not just a 2 year
span. It's just a 2 year span.
It's a larger period of time. But what I have done during the course is that build a constant two-way communication with my audience. So when I do all the others, they believe me. We do the same thing across for every launch that we have to do offline. And I think one of the most interesting thing that happens is that while you're doing this whole process, as she said, the BAs keep giving you feedback on whether you're getting the right audience or not. The sales kind of get monitored very closely to say that whether you're actually seeing deepening of bonds. And as they say, omni-channel is the way to go. You will start seeing that searches through those cities also start going higher for you. And that's when you know that your strategy is truly working. And then you build on it and go to another city, and that's how you sort of build on it.
That's the growth model. Yeah. Just one last question. Because the consumer is very close to us and we want to keep the consumer with ourselves, do you see subscriptions coming in? Because globally subscriptions and subscription boxes have grown, but in India it's still to take off. Yeah. So is there something happening there? Do you think that's the way that you all will want to go?
I would love to go the subscription way because there is a pattern in which you would constantly keep buying your body washes and shampoos and so on and so forth. But I think the biggest trouble we have with subscription in the country, because we've tried it and we've tried really hard, is that our payments method still needs a lot more of going forward, right? We still have the two-way authentication, which makes it harder for subscription to work. The only way subscriptions work, and I do a lot of subscriptions wherever possible, so my milk basket and everything that comes in, but it happens only on places where you are ready to make and sort of load up your wallet and prepay in advance.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So getting the consumer to prepay in advance is where the biggest challenge is. And I think if that's kind of removed and we figure out a way in the payments where it is far more secure or in a fashion that the consumer believes so, then I think the subscription can be the way to go because it's very easy. It's adding ease to the life of the consumer.
But Aditi, I'll tell you
I thought your category it would work, right? Health?
No, and I'll tell you.
Closer to me?
I know. But I'll tell you a small insight in a country which is led by discounting strategy as a conversion matrix. It's very difficult to build subscription model. And I think it's still going to take 5 to 7 years more till the time D2C has evolved to a level where we are, not pinned by marketplaces and their smart advertising in terms of discounting, where still there is, so much competition that there is too much discounting that happens over marketplaces in any of the events that keep happening every month.
The big sale days.
So everybody is in a habit that, if I get into a subscription, I might miss on, getting it at a better price. So it's still going to take a little time. It has started with milk, it has started with coffee, tea. I think slowly is the time when it will all come to the bigger ticket sizes as well.
Sure. So thank you so much. I think our time's up. Great panel and great learnings. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you.